I'm going to introduce everyone. So, this is Anil. Anil is a funeral director who wants to make a change against the death penalty and who wants to help the underprivileged and lonely via charity outreach, food and donation, and pro bono funerals. So, Anil has done the funerals for Kawat and again. So this is Sharifah. Sharifah is Syed's brother. Sister, elder sister of Syed. Yes. Syed is one of the people who are incarcerated on death row today. And Sharifah has been working in the ship management industry for over 10 years. If she has free time, she enjoys reading just like Syed. This is Elijah. So Elijah believes that to live in a just and compassionate society for all, amidst the unjust status quo, those who are made to be most vulnerable in society need to be emancipated from such systems of oppression. This includes the abolition of the death penalty. The anti-death penalty activist is also a sociology undergraduate. Okay, so please welcome our panelists. Okay, so I'll just start off with some questions. So, yeah. So I'll start off with Anil. So, Anil, why did you decide to reach out and offer to do the funerals for Kawan and again at cost?
Okay, so for my very first funeral was actually Nagin. So I think it was a very last minute decision of me. I wasn't really following the case per se, but I think that when the efforts got really, everyone was really putting in their effort to save him. I think 1 or 2 weeks before, and it was all over social media. So that's when I started getting a bit more involved. I went to Hong Lim Park for the vigil or the protest or what it was, and I think that's when it struck me how unfair the death penalty actually is. And so the night before he was executed, when the final appeal failed, I decided to reach out to actually first Mr. M. Ravi, because he posted it on social media, and that's how I came forward. So I came forward to help because at that point I didn't know who was actually paying for the funerals, and I felt that, whoever it was, but I felt that if the family had to go ahead and pay for it, it's a very big burden on top of what they're already facing, and they've already spent so much to, in Singapore, lawyers and all that, it's not cheap even to submit the things to court. You have to pay money. So I just wanted to try and get some of the burden off them, so that's why I came forward.
So how did you first find out about the death penalty?
First find out, I think everyone knows it exists, but for me, being in the industry, during COVID, I actually entered the industry 1 year before COVID. So during COVID, there were no executions per se, so we didn't deal with that. But I think I only got more involved in it when it came to Nagin, because at that point I wasn't really against the death penalty as a whole. I was just like, what the general people were thinking of how it's unfair because, you have low IQ and stuff like that. But, as I got more involved with, and I talked more to the families and all that, that's when I realized how unfair the whole thing actually is.
Okay, so I'll be answering all the questions. So, Sharifah, did you have any hesitations coming forward publicly as someone with a family on death row?
I did hesitate at first because I have to think about my job and my colleagues and my boss, because they're all not aware of my brother. So it's difficult to come forward.
So, did you fear for backlash for yourself? And
of course. I fear that maybe my brother would be mistreated, and And of course, sometimes, we don't want to read the comments, but when you come across it, people are hurtful.
Okay. So, Elijah, you wrote clemency letters for many people who were scheduled for execution this year. You've delivered them to Istana in person and moved many others to do the same. Why did you persist in this action?
Right. I mean, like, these people are individuals, right? Like, they're human beings. So, when the state decisively, like, schedules an execution for a person, you don't just, like, ignore it. I think it's important that, like, you step forward and say, like, it is fucked up, like, you can't just, like, kill people, Like, these are people with, like, lives, with stories, with families, with loved ones, with friends. And, like, I mean, like, at the core of everything, like, they are a person who has been given life, and the state doesn't have the right to take that away from them and from the people who love them. So I think, for me, it was important that, like, I, like, as much as I felt that I could at that point in time, write in letters to the Istana to, like, call for clemency. I guess for me, like, it felt like what I could do in my own individual capacity at that point in time to, like, voice out, like, as an individual, as someone in this state which claims of itself to be a democracy, like, listen to my voice, listen to, like, the voices of the people who are calling you to, like, just, stop killing people. Yeah.
What did it mean to you to do this for each person?
I think for me, it meant that, like, like, I see you, like, these people, and therefore I see you, I see your families, I see that, like, you are people, you have a stake in, like, existence, in general. It's not that deep, these people are people, and, like, I think it's important to acknowledge that and extend care in that regard. And, it's saying that, like, hey, look at these, like, individuals, like, these are not just, like, statistics that, like, you throw onto some, like, MHA survey and, like, call it quits. These are actual, like, lives that you're talking about, actual, like, entire human beings. Yeah.
So, Anil, you've organized and carried out the funerals for Nagin in Kawan. You've met their families as well. What effect did these experiences have on you?
Okay, so I'm just going to be honest. For Nagin's funeral, I wasn't really dealing with the family. I was more in touch with Kirsten and Kokila. So his mom wasn't actually around for the funeral, she already left. So I don't think that was much of experience with the families for me. But for Kalwan, it was a different story because I was way more involved in his case. I went for the court hearing and I saw the family. And I think 4 or 5 p.m. the thing was rejected. And then we left court together, and then I had to meet them in the hotel at, I think, 10 plus. So I think that was, for lack of a better word, it was quite fucked up because we saw him alive on screen like 5 hours ago, and now they're planning his funeral. And I've done a lot of funerals in my life. When someone passes away, you sit down, you choose the coffin and stuff like that. But they were doing it while he was still alive, maybe 20 minutes away from them. And I think that's quite shitty. So it wasn't easy for me also because, like, how do you put it? I wouldn't want to be in that situation myself, and it's not like a normal person, like let's say you're preparing for your mom who's going to pass on, she's old or she's of old age and you're choosing the coffin for her, that's fine, but this is someone who has a perfectly healthy life ahead of him, he's quite fit, he looked quite good anyway, so having to choose a coffin, make the arrangements, final clothes, I think it was just really shit and I actually was with his family all the way up till Cameron Highlands because I followed them to perform the funeral there, and it was really eye-opening. I don't really know how to describe the feeling, but it's just really eye-opening of the way the state murders someone, and their families are just like, it's so predicted. Like you know that she's gonna die at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Like there is no two ways about it, and I think that's something that nobody should deal with.
So you said you were telling me that you went to Cameron Highlands with Colin's family. So why did you decide to go?
Okay, the initial decision was based on a like very funeral director point of view that there are no undertakers in Cameron Highlands. It's a mountain range, so I just wanted to make sure that because if I repatriate people to other parts of Malaysia, I partner funeral companies, but up in Cameron I don't. So I went there to ensure that everything was done properly. So that was the basis of the decision. But I think on the day itself, when they came to prison to collect him, and I was talking to them more, I just wanted to complete the journey with them. I wasn't involved in the whole, the fighting of court and all that, but I just felt a need to go and send him off properly because, it is my responsibility as a funeral director, but I think as a person as well, I just wanted to be there for them, because there again, with no undertakers there, it's going to be very hard for them to be liaising and all that, so again, to take off the burden of them.
What experience did that leave for you going to Cameron?
I think it just put me at the center of the grief, because usually, even in Singapore, we just send the person to the home and then we go off and do our own things, but being there with them throughout that whole period until he was cremated, I think it just threw me in the center of what they go through, and what I cannot fairly say that I can relate to them or how they feel.
So, I'll go back to Sharifah. What do you think of the fact that no MP has agreed to take the family's petition to Parliament so far?
I think it's a sad excuse for them to call themselves our MP, because I thought they are there to represent the people, but maybe it's just a hoax. They're more to the government, although I understand, we have to follow the rules, etc. But what about the people's voices?
Yes, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
That's me too.
So, that day we were talking about, we were on a call and you were telling me that you saw a second chances poster on the bus stop.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
I thought, what a load of crap. That they somehow second chances is deep. How do they determine who deserves a second chance? So my brother don't deserve a second chance. All those other inmates on death row don't deserve a second chance. It's very selective and very contradicting, and just, it's not right that they will turn around and do that. And then just a few weeks ago, they were killing all the people, all the inmates on death row. So, yeah.
Really doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, and it's also very, it's hypocrisy. Yeah.
So, may I ask what are Syed's thoughts on the Stop the Killing campaign, and is there anything that you would like to share with everyone today?
I think Syed would probably feel that, he's already serving death sentence. So why is he not permitted or not allowed for his childhood friends to visit him? They only allow that visit towards his last few days, So I don't understand that rule, because sometimes the community or the people who support him or who are there to just understand, they cannot visit him, they cannot see him. So it's only up to me and my sister. So it's just between the two of us. So there's so many days of visit is wasted, because sometimes, me and my sister, we cannot always visit because of work, etc., family commitments and all that. So it would be nice if they would allow, it's like people in the TJC or his childhood friends at least to visit him instead of the last moments of his life. So that means if they have allowed them to visit during his last moments, then why not allow now? every day is like his last moments, isn't it? They give you the letter and say, okay, next week is the sentencing. So every day is like the last moment. Yeah. Sorry, Syed appreciate that there are people who are out there supporting. Even he told me this, he said, sis, even if after I'm gone, you must still continue this fight.
So, I know if I asked, what do you hope people will do to support and grow the movement for abolition?
I think people just need to put their voices out there. A lot of the people I've spoken to, my friends, my relatives, they all don't agree with it, but they are not doing anything about it.
That's afraid.
Sorry?
That's afraid.
Yeah. A lot of people are. Sorry?
No guts. Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you
Seriously,
just.
I said, yeah.
Correct.
You got
You
no
just-
guts.
You just need to plug up the balls and go and do something about it. What I am doing per se isn't exactly in support of the death penalty, but I would like to do more. In the same way, I think everyone, okay, now let's just be honest, if everyone was to stand up and plug up the balls and stand against the government, they have to do something about it. Now if there's still that 50% who is sitting down at home and like, I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to do anything about it, then the government's also not going to do anything about it. But if all of us could just come together and go up to them and, hey, stop killing people, it's going to work. And I think that's what I wish people would do, just plug up the balls.
Okay, so last question I have for you is, how has your position on the death penalty shifted as you've learned more about the system and what the families go through?
I think it's that I didn't have a position to change. I wasn't really very concerned with it until I got involved with it. And once I realized how screwed up this whole thing actually is, I really want to do more. I also need to plug up my balls. So I think after being in, especially with Kalwan's family, after being part of their journey, after he passed on, I wouldn't want to see any other family go through that shit ever again. So I want to. That's how I have changed.
So it was going with his family to Cameron Highlands that really, really solidified your feelings for the death penalty. Okay. So, Elijah, you've also, so you were telling me just now that you stand out after class and you go for signatures, right? And basically the things that you do in school. You've also been doing door knocking to collect signatures. Do you have any interesting experiences from the door knocking?
Interesting experiences. So actually, quite a few units that I visited, they were speaking in Malay, which I didn't really know how to converse in. So my door knocking partner was the one engaging with the residents mostly. I remember there was this unit. Then the dog very cute, so I was just playing with the dog the whole time. Then she was engaging with the resident. But I think one of the most memorable families that we visited was the moment we went up to them, right? They were immediately actually our family has been talking about death penalty for I don't know recently, I think from what they said the past couple of months. But they didn't really know what to do with that those conversations. They were just having these conversations at home, and it's the death penalty sucks, what do we do? Then I think she was about secondary school. She looked about secondary school age. Then she called her mom out, and it's then her mom came out and like talked to us as well. And then she told us how she actually like worked in, she was working in like grassroots like stuff, like the PA stuff or like PAP, I don't know, there's honestly no difference. So, so she was working in those stuff. Then she was saying, oh, actually, like, I tried, like, talking to Shanmugam about, like, the death penalty, but, like, he was very, like, dismissive also, I mean, not surprised. So it was very heartening to know that, like, hey, like, you know, people out there, like, they're also, like, trying their best to, like, engage in efforts to, like, call their MPs or ministers in for, like, conversations surrounding the death penalty and, like, how fucked up it is. But like, I mean, unfortunately, like as of like most experiences that we've had, like they're not very receptive, lah. Yeah, and yeah, so I think that was one of the more like interesting like experiences we've had. Then afterwards, like the whole family signed like the petition sheet. So that was the first unit that like we spoke to. So that was like a very encouraging start, like of our door knocking like journey. Also, may I add like another like school experience, because I suddenly thought of it when I mentioned Shamugam's name. So right, so Shamugam came for a talk like at NTU about like 2 months ago, and so like the talk was like called like social fabric, and so basically no one had an itinerary of like what the talk was gonna be about lah. So it was like a jump scare where like he came in and like showed us like the content page, and he was like, okay, so we're gonna talk about like plans to like repeal section 3778 and like death penalty. So then he said at the start like, oh, we're not gonna like, you know, take up too much time like with me like just presenting slides or what, like we want to leave more time for like Q&A or something. Then end up like he presented all his slides anyways and talked about how I mean like his common like narratives like in support of like the death penalty and bringing in like, oh, think about like the children, which like, yeah, I think it's important to think about the children, but not like, you know, use them to like push your agenda. So anyways, like I went up to like ask him a question, and the moment I introduced myself, I'm like, hi, I'm Elijah, Faculty of Social Sciences. He's like, I know you. And I was like, okay, thanks. And it's like, oh, and I read the petition, and I was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I hope you like consider it, you know, like how am I supposed to like respond to like his like random statement? Then, so I like asked my question, and like barely like 5 words in, he like started like interrupting me, and I could barely finish a sentence, like the whole time I was standing there with the microphone in my face. So, like I was talking about how like, oh, you know, like to set some context, like more than 10 people have been executed like this year alone, and you know, majority of them come from backgrounds of poverty. They're like mostly Malay and Indian people, and then he was like, no, got Chinese people also. I was like, okay, I said majority, right? Like in my head, like I didn't say it out, but like so the whole like Q&A experience was just very frustrating, and he kept interrupting me. Oh, it's okay. He kept interrupting me to like just push his own narrative. Thank you so much. Yeah, to push his own narrative, and I could barely finish a sentence. So ultimately, when I finally managed to get to my question, after what felt like 10 minutes of standing there and listening to his monologue, I asked about like, oh, do you have plans to like call for a moratorium? So like, what's the methodology and sample size of like the MHA surveys like you like to quote so much? Then he basically ignored like the moratorium question, and to the like survey, like the question about like methodology and sample size, like his response was essentially just source, trust me, bro. So like I basically got nothing out of like that Q&A and except for like seeing him like constantly interrupt me and like just seeming very agitated and defensive about like his position lah. Then and I think like that experience was like shared with like other students who tried to ask him questions also. They were constantly interrupted as well. Barely anyone got to like ask that question without facing some sort of like condescension or interruption. There was one other student as well who was like asking a question, and he like Shamugam constantly went like, that's not true, but continue. And I was like, okay, can you just shut up and let the student ask that question? Yeah, so that was one of the experiences in like school. Like it wasn't outreach per se, but like trying to like engage with like ministers surrounding conversations about the death penalty. Which wasn't a conversation as much as it was a monologue lah. Yeah.
Is that like a common pattern? Because you went for the meet the people sessions as well, you've met the ministers there.
Right, meet the people sessions. For me, the people sessions, I think like there was some level of intimidation also, cause like at first they didn't let me like go in to like meet my MP, cause like they said, oh, you're under 21, so you cannot. But then I was like, okay, but I volunteered for MPS when I was 17. So why volunteer can, but I got issues I cannot raise? Why I can work for you, but you cannot respond to me? So I was very confused. Yeah, then also like, at some point in time, like they brought me into like the room alone. And then like 3 of them surrounded me and started asking me questions before I even got to like speak to the MP about like the petition and like the death penalty and stuff. Yeah, so I think like, I guess like, yeah, recurrence of like scare tactics lah. Yeah, and trying to like shut you up. Yeah.
Okay. So, Sharifa, I'd like to ask you, what do you hope people will do to support and show up for the campaign for abolition? What do you hope people will do to support and show up for the campaign for the abolition of the death penalty?
What do I, sorry again? So sorry.
What do you hope people will do to support?
People will do, okay. I think be more, if they're not aware, maybe ask questions and just maybe interact with the families or interact with the group that support to abolish death penalty. I think maybe I think fear is one of the biggest things that people don't come forward, and if they do also, they still have that fear. Yeah, so like what we're having now, maybe they can come and support, But even if they have the questions to ask, like how my colleague was saying that her brother say not to participate because her brother is a policeman, etc. Maybe she is not aware that she can still sign a petition and not be so scared. So yeah, that awareness. Yeah.
Okay, so can say thank you to our panelists. Currently, we'll start the Q&A. So please ask if you have any questions to ask. Someone will pass you the mic, and you can ask your questions to the panelists.
No question, but can I say something, Sharifa?
Yes.
I know what you're trying to say. Stop being God in your hands, and you're not alone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anybody have questions?
Actually, my sister said something. Can I share? She was saying that actually the issue, or her issue in general, is the narration of drugs, where it is always spoken as drug abuse and not drug addiction, and how the public is being taught that drug abusers are harmful to society. There is no talk about drug addiction and how you can help someone you know struggling with drug addiction. whereas there are ads on how to help loved ones with gambling addiction. Yeah. My sister Shamila said that, so I agree. Yeah. So
if nobody wants to ask, then I'll ask a few questions to get the ball rolling. So, why do you think that the government has, like the way they approach drugs is very, it comes from a point of view of you abuse drugs like Shamila was saying, and it's not that you're struggling with and experiencing an addiction. Why is it that everything else, like the videos, there are advertisements for gambling addiction, but not for how do you help someone who's struggling with it?
I think it's because the way the society looks at people who are addicted to drugs, you know, and it's been that terminology that they call them drug abusers and not drug. Not a sickness. It is looked upon as a very criminal thing. In fact, last time they had a DRC in Singapore, Drug Rehab Center, but that is no longer in existence, and now they only put them into the hardcore prison, like Changi prison and all that. So last time there was a Sembawang DRC, but that no longer exists. So that goes to say, from there you can see that the government just does not look at drug abusers. Abusers as an addiction, as a sickness. Is actually a sickness. Why in other countries they have proper rehab places? You know, they are not treated as criminals. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, if anybody asks me why my brother did it, he have choices. There are certain people who give that kind of remarks. You have a choice, and then now you're turning around and saying that the government is inhumane for killing people, but you don't understand the life of a person who is addicted to drugs. We don't know what it's like until you are the one really addicted to drugs. I mean, have you all craved for anything, certain food or certain drinks that you must have every day, coffee, you know? I'm not saying coffee is the same as drugs, but I'm saying it's an addiction. It's something that they are also themselves struggling to cope with. You don't know what they're going through mentally. Maybe every day they're asking themselves, why am I addicted to this? Why do I need this to function? So there's no place for them to seek help. Instead, they're just being penalized. You're a drug abuser, that's it.
Yeah, that's very true. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to add? Like, you can just add on to the conversation if you have anything you want to say. Okay.
Okay, I have to be honest, I was once a drug addict. Yeah, I was once a drug addict. And in my experience, you know, in my experience during the drug addict days, as a bad guy, but the truth is, in my experience, it's a substance that makes me escape reality. I cannot rely on anyone because no one can feel your pain beside yourself. No one can understand your pain beside yourself. So I rely on substance. So the only thing I relies on is drugs. Specifically weed. Weed is not addictive. Let me tell you all this. Weed is not addictive. Fun fact, there was a time where my brother went in jail and I was alone at home. And I have to take care of my mom alone. And I'm struggling with my own mental health, so I have to rely on drugs, which is weed, to make my mom happy. You know? To make my mom happy and to open up and have more confidence to talk to my mom more. So don't judge a book by its cover. You guys didn't even flip a page to understand the page. You guys need to flip at least half the page on the books. Don't just judge the cover. And here I am, I have to admit, I'm still relying on it, but I'm trying to cut down. I'm trying to cut down. I'm trying to be a better person, you know? People like me rely on drugs because they need to escape reality for once. They need it. It's a need. Just like you guys rely on what? Listening to music. You guys rely on music. You guys rely on food as a coping mechanism. You guys draw. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. It's just a different perspective and it's a different thing to rely on. That's all I have to say.
Current husband is also inside, right? That's why I'm home with him. Even though he used to be my neighbor. I married in 2019 when this guy is my neighbor. He's supposed to be my godbrother. I know him well. He took drugs for so long. And now this is the 9th time inside. Half of his years he just spent time inside. So sometimes people do have kind of different judges towards these things or these kind of people they think. And I was actually disappointed when I married this guy who used to be my godbrother, my neighbor. Although I know him for the past 19 years. I come up the toilet when I saw the first time how he done it. To put it just right next to the vein of his ankle with the jet. So now it's inside, and at the same time, I'm going through so much things like depression, anxiety, all these things, and at the same time, just come across with my son who did bad things, and he just left because he did too much. That kind of, you know, like yeah, drugs make you, but punish the person inside. How you feel the person who you love, your family member, you waited for them. And I don't think so that the government is fair. They don't see, they just, they didn't stand where we are. They don't come across with, like, you know, they can say, oh, some rubbish, you know, in Malay they call it sampah masyarakat. Flies, they even though side case and the Indian guy who actually could be given chances, the Malaysian guy, my second son thought about this and said, rubbish, you know, they are not supposed to do this and that. Even my second son used to have this cannabis. Even though I don't know. When I was young, yes, when I was like 17, I tried once, like, called the ganja feel, ecstasy, what they call it, so many lah. Even cannabis, I hate so honestly. But why they have to judge a person from what they have it? You know, when like, you already punish them in jail for how many years, then all of a sudden, death penalty. Not enough punish for them? Why do you have to do the death penalty? It shouldn't be that. Even a foreigner who they really pleaded is not guilty whatsoever, give them a chance. We are not God. Don't think God in yourself. You know? Just give it a just put yourself. Because they are not in their shoe. Their children, their husband, their wife, their whoever, their family is not in that situation. That's why they just thought, oh, just punish like that. It was like really, I was angry. So many things happened. Not only happened to my family, it also happened to someone surrounding us. That's how you feel like to. And you're not alone. 1 for 10 out. So, anything? Yes, you just step on. Years by years, everything's changed. We going home, the younger taking place. The young generation, they will go against the government. That's for sure.
That was a really insightful and really like beautiful thing for you to say. Does anybody have anything to add on to any of the questions and discussions that we had just now. Don't be shy.
Hello. I think I just wanted to add on to thank you for all of you for sharing. I think personally, I started doing some work in the movement with regards to against the death penalty. I still have a lot to learn, a lot to listen. So thank you very much for sharing. I think I also just wanted to pick up on some of the points when you guys were sharing with regards to like the health, whether the rehabilitation. That I'd just like to point that this is also very much a healthcare system issue, very much a socio-economic status differences, like the way we structure our economic systems as well. A lot of it is systemic. So, with regards to drug use, I think people across all spectrums use drugs, but who is penalized for it and who goes to jail for it is dependent across the socio-economic status. And it is very much political. A lot of it is political. And beyond that, linking it to the healthcare system, drug use, or at least heavy drug use, is a healthcare issue. And it should be treated as such. It should not be treated as a legal issue as the way we do it in Singapore. And it is my hope also that people across all areas, looking at all of you from all different walks of life, that we can then come together and make that level of change.
Yeah, I'll stay here just to build on what everyone was saying. So I actually take psychiatric medicines. So to me, actually, it feels quite similar to drug use. And it's like what Samuel was saying, like why is it that some drugs are considered legitimate and why are some not? And who has access to, the legal drugs? Right? I really resonated with what, sorry, I don't know. She was saying about how sometimes drugs can be the only friend that one can rely on when life is very hard and one can't change the situation that one is living in, and it's something that's reliable, and I actually do take a drug that I'm now addicted to. It is an addictive drug, a benzodiazepine, and it's legal. But at the time I remember, and now I'm addicted to it, so I have to cut down slowly. So it's like a healthcare issue as well, because you can't just suddenly stop taking a drug. And if I don't take it, I get worse than I was before with the drug. And but at the time I also had to take it because if I didn't, then I wouldn't have been able to survive. So people do take drugs for reasons. To survive, just to get on to the next day. If not, then how does one survive until the next day? Then you won't even be alive. So, yeah,
Are you okay?
Yeah, I think that was really insightful. Like, why are certain drugs criminalized and why are we only given safe access to certain drugs? Shouldn't we be all granted safe access to drugs, and at the same time, if we struggle with addiction, then shouldn't our communities come together to help us instead of punish us? Because we're all struggling, right? And we deserve to be safe.
A round of applause if you
I was also gonna thank everyone for this discourse and for sharing. One of the things that I face when I talk to my friends about the death penalty, or even Singapore being a police state and the abolition of all of it, they always ask me, so what's going to replace carceral logic? And I don't have an answer to that. So I just want to hear what happens, what replaces all of this, and how do we as a community build how do we build kinder communities? Anyway, basically what replaces carceral logic and the imaginations of what do we imagine moving forward? Yeah.
Maybe I could start before we with this as well. I mean, I don't have a complete image of what that society would look like either. I don't know what exact systems would be in place, but I know that like a lot of the crimes that we convict people of in the current day are like capital crimes. You know, we see like theft, you know, drug use. Most of these cases end up prosecuting people from marginalized backgrounds. So like fundamentally there needs to be a shift in like how we move away from a system that prioritizes profit over people and start moving towards a society that like pushes for care, pushes for community. And I don't know what exactly that system would look like in its exact mechanisms, but like it's a matter of like, you know, not just like throwing people into jail and like putting them in like terrible prison conditions, humiliating like circumstances that they have to face in prison, but how do we look at like what are people's like, you know, the different needs that they have, and how do we approach interpersonal harm in a way where we hold people accountable and we also like do our best to like keep one another safe and keep one another, approach one another with care and understanding, rather than just instantly, oh, you did this, according to our books, you're going to be in prison for like the next 15 years, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think like reimagining a society that like prioritizes care and people fundamentally, rather than one that is capitalistically driven. Yeah.
I think we will need to wrap up like soon. Yeah, okay, so after this we'll have the open